You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live.
Well, yeah, you'll have to ask him that, Matt, when you get him on the podcast, won't you? But I mean, it was.
I don't think he takes my calls, Paul.
The book that I want to emerge is Martin O'Neill's memoirs.
Oh, I'd love to get him on a podcast. But it's not going to happen.
I don't think it will happen, mate. He might need Ash to host that. A little bit of trepidation, to be honest. It's been a while since I've had a chance to speak to Martin O'Neill, so really excited about it. Got a lot to ask, and just hope that it all goes well, and we were able to bring you a very exciting, interesting episode of Claret and Blue. But yeah, nervous. I feel sick, to be honest.
Hello,
how are you?
Pleased
to see you.
After all these years.
It's been a while. Yeah, does it still?
Of course it does.
Me too.
Absolutely, it really rankles with me because it's a sending off offence. It's the rule of the game. I was desperately wanting Aston Villa to get into the Champions League, which is what I thought that all the Villa fans would want it. This was the last 32 of a competition. We're playing a lot of games that season. If leaving at the football club taints everything about it, there is absolutely nothing I could do about it. Would I change? Would I do it differently? Absolutely.
Hello and welcome to the Claret and Blue podcast. I'm surprised, pleased, intrigued to be joined by Martin O'Neill as our special guest here today. How are you, Martin?
Well, I'm fine, Matt. I'm fine. I was nearly going to say better for seeing you, but maybe that might not be totally true. But listen, and you've changed a little bit, you know. I like myself, a wee bit less hair, and no. But listen, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me.
No, it's good to see you. It's been a while, and obviously you're kicking off a leg of promoting the new book that you have on the table here. On days like this, My Life in Football. I suppose it's an obvious question to start with. Has it been a kind of cathartic experience getting all that out of your head and committing it to paper?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how what I wanted to do first of all, you know. But first of all, I wanted to write it myself, and of course, I study write longhand, and that does take a little bit of time, particularly after a page or two where your writing gets a wee bit raggedy. I had done an article in a newspaper with Matt Dickinson way back in the Times. And actually during part of the article I was saying that I was doing a little bit of writing. Anyway, it was picked up by Pan Macmillan, the publishers, and the young lad, Matt Cole, got in touch with Matt Dickinson and said, well listen, we would have an interest. So I go there almost like an interview, or you know, an audition I should say, to read something to the lady in charge. And no, that was worrying enough at the time, but she really liked it, and so it gave me the heart to go on and complete it. So from that viewpoint, you mentioned cathartic. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of little books written about me a way back, particularly I think in my Celtic days, that I thought were a wee bit wide off the mark. But sure, do you ever view yourself as other people see you? Perhaps not. And so I just thought, listen, I'll put it down. I'll have a couple of little funny stories. Bit of pathos as well to attach to it, but overall, it's something I probably really wanted to do, and I wanted to do myself rather than something that was ghostwritten.
So obviously here at the Claret and Blue podcast, we're concerned about a particular chapter of this book, that being Aston Villa, obviously. So 12 years on, Martin, how do you reflect on your spell at Aston Villa?
Oh well, okay. How do I reflect on it? I think that, you know, with 3 top 10 or top 6 finishes in consecutive years, you would have to say we reached a cup final in my final year and then the semi-final of the FA Cup. I'd like to think about it, you know, as being pretty good. But obviously, in the manner in which I left, I don't think it was the manner. If you're talking about 12 years reflection now, I would have thought that I would have changed that. I wouldn't have done this. My arguments with the owner of the football club, Mr. Lerner, that's what really in the final year was probably disintegrating. I think I would have should have dealt with it in a better fashion. I should have buried the hatchet with him, say, listen, let's get on with things anyway, and if this is the way you want to run the football club, I'll abide by it. You know, I just probably wanted, I wanted us to be in the Champions League, really, as much as that there. But in the manner in which I'm going just before the end of the season, if you're asking, can I get those 12 years back again? I think I definitely would have done it differently. But an old friend of mine, Alan Parry, who is the director at Wycombe Wanderers, that I got to know quite well, massive Liverpool fan, but very, very good commentator. He said, Martin, you would resign if someone nicked your car parking space. So I think there's an element of that, Matt. So I wish, now that my car parking space wasn't nicked at Villa, but I should have dealt with it in a better fashion.
I suppose why everybody was so frustrated and angry and upset when you left, the reason was they didn't want you to leave because you'd done such a good job. So talk us through a little bit of how you went about doing that job. So I suppose the first question would be, of the signings that you made, and you were able to bring a lot of people to the club who would go on to be proper heroes, especially for a generation who haven't seen Villa achieve much at all. So who was the one that you'd single out as being the best signing that you made when you were at Villa?
Well, that's a very, very good point. First of all, if you're talking about and I didn't even sign him, but convincing Gareth Barry to stay at the football club in the first couple of weeks, Gareth's head was turned, and I think he thought that Villa were going nowhere at the time. He'd lost his place in the England squad. He'd been out of that there for at least 18-20 months. And there was an offer in from Portsmouth at the time. I think it was Harry Redknapp might have been in charge, I'm not sure. But anyway, so convincing Gareth to stay, and I remember saying to him, I think it was out in Germany, would you really consider it? Because if someone's adamant about leaving a football club, then there's not really much you can do about it. But I think there was an offer of £4 million in for him, which was really insignificant for Gareth's ability. But I did say to him, regardless of what happened, I'd hope to try and build a team around him, and that honestly, I remember saying this to him, that I would get him into the England squad. Delightfully, he stayed at the football club, and so we were able to go on. My first signing was still Ian Petrov. His debut at West Ham was as good a debut as I've ever seen. Then, of course, he doesn't hit the heights that I'm expecting to. I tell him this is not really going to work out. Now he's still in, and honestly, in fairness to him, he did say, Gaffer, I'm telling you now, he said, I will fight my way back into the team. And so he did.
Did you think there was actually a potential, you were kind of almost, I've seen it in the book, you were almost advising him to say you might need a fresh start somewhere else?
Absolutely. I know, hopefully in a friendly sort of manner to him, because he'd not. And I was disappointed. I was disappointed with him. I was disappointed for him, because I know what he was capable of doing. And I thought maybe the change of club, having been so brilliant in his opening game at West Ham, never forget that. I know to fall by the wayside as much as he had done, but I knew that it was there. But I thought that if he's not going to cut it here at Villa Park, then perhaps maybe a change of club might be the best thing for him. But I didn't really want it to happen. But he said, "You mark my words, man. I will be back." So well done him. Obviously. James Milner, big signing. Ashley Young, would you believe it? Carew in a swap with Milan Baras was. Carew still. He makes me laugh when I think about it. John was fantastic for us when he decided to play. It was just that sometimes John was possibly more interested in the bright lights, and not necessarily in Birmingham. Sometimes down in London. So cajoling John into playing. When his mother, who was living in Norway at the time, might have a different opinion. So, for instance, John might phone his mother every day. She might detect in this phone call he might have a hoarse voice, and then would say, "John, you cannot play on the Saturday with this hoarse voice." Sorry, you actually can play football with a hoarse voice, So getting John out to play, you had to convince him, "John, do you know what? Listen, we're playing Bolton today. You're actually, you're brilliant against Bolton. You always do well." And then he goes out and smashes it, and then the following day he might come in with a really sore finger, you know. So, but he was terrific. He's really terrific. You couldn't not like him, John. You know, you could not, despite of his indiscretions and things that you see here. So, Ashley Young coming down at that particular time, terrific, really, really terrific. Milner, of course, was big. Stuart Downing did really well. So the players that, and despite what you think, man, which you'd obviously had reported on, the most I ever spent on a player was £12 million for two, Stuart Downing and James Milner, and I think Villa got their money back on both of them. But what I'm saying is that yes, like everything else, I want every signing to be great, and it might not necessarily be the case. I read in the aftermath, you know, criticisms of, you know, not staying with Gary Cahill at the time. Gary's turned out to have a great career, well done to him. But he did go to Bolton. It wasn't as if he went to Real Madrid. And he spent 4 years at Bolton before eventually going on to Chelsea. Did really well. Gary, I don't think would have taken the place at that time, still being so young, with Mellberg and Lawson in the side. But Gary, in fairness to him, he wanted to push on in his career, really wanted to, and if he wasn't going to play in our team, he wanted to play in someone's first team. So really well done him.
I think you used to have a phrase called Monday morning quarterback, I think you said, and I think there was a sense that at the time that people were quick to judge after the event when you were the one who was having to live it and manage it and juggle it. Do you think that kind of contributed towards some of the, I don't know, the stress levels or?
Well, yeah, I think you caused me most stress levels, you know, because you were the ultimate Monday morning quarterback, you know. So from that viewpoint, so I'm getting my chance to get my own back after all these years. I'm glad you're still alive. And but yeah, likewise, on this side of the table, you live as a football manager. You live with criticism every single day. It's not right with everyone. You just have to accept that, you know. That's the whole point about it. And even if you get a good result, you'll get some wag coming up, like yourself, and saying, you know, something wasn't right. So you go, if you feel as if the criticism is a wee bit too strong and it can really blow up, I think that's the time that you try and maybe do something about it. Yeah. But overall, I honestly think, Matt, I think you kind of know my character. Well, maybe you don't, but I think overall, yeah. I think the one thing, it was as is now called, the retreat from Russia, I think was the one that I probably couldn't get my head around it. And this is what I mean. So we're in the last 32 of the Europa League.
I think that gets lost sometimes, Martin. I probably was responsible for whipping it up at the time, but it wasn't the semi-final, it was the last 32, and I think...
Do you know what? That's the whole point, Matt. If it was the quarter-final...
I'm still not agreeing. I'm not saying... I'm not agreeing with what you did, I'm just...
Oh, you're not? I thought you were. I thought you... I was almost like getting an apology there for a moment or two. No, what had happened is that I was desperately wanting Aston Villa to get into the Champions League, which is what I thought that all the Villa fans would have wanted. This was the last 32 of a competition. We're playing in Moscow. We know that the next draw is going to be against either Tottenham Hotspur, I think, or Shakhtar Donetsk. When Harry Redknapp said, "I have no interest in this competition. I need to keep my eye on what's happening domestically with Tottenham Hotspur," and Harry got no criticism whatsoever. And here we are in the 32, same stage of the competition in Russia, on a plastic pitch in February. Now, Sir Alex Ferguson had been saying to me when I'd spoken to him occasionally during the season, "You're going in with the same players all the time." And I was going to the well with the same players that I trusted. So the likes of Milner, who could possibly run all day, even he was, you know, we're playing a lot of games that season. I thought if we'd won the game at Villa Park, it might have been different. We might have thought, yeah, listen here, we can do it. But if you look at the side, it wasn't an under-12 team. You know, there was a couple of young lads who were making their debuts, Barry Bannon and Albrighton, I think. And Albrighton was going on to have a splendid career. But a lot of the other side, the back four in the midfield, were boys who played against Everton a couple of weeks earlier that day in the FA Cup, a competition that I hold in the most magnificent esteem, you know. So it wasn't as if we were going in with that, but it was led to believe that. What I thought to myself, right, regardless of you stirring it up, I'm not too worried about that. What I'm saying is that it caused a bit of a commotion. And I thought that I thought the Villa fans would say, "Oh, listen, no, we're trying to go for the Champions League." Now, had we beaten Stoke City the following at the weekend, when we're leading 2-0 and coasting with a couple of minutes left in the game, I think it probably would have been forgotten. But I think the combination of those things and those points dropped against Stoke City were like a kind of a stick to beat you with, as much as anything else. And that was where I felt that was not. If the Villa fans had told me beforehand, listen, we want to try and win the competition, don't worry about the Premier League, then that might have been a different issue. I thought, well, certainly my aim for the club was to try and get into the Champions League.
Am I right thinking there was a meal at Villa Park after that?
There was about 200 fans travelled to the game, and so in an attempt to make up for it, to make up for their trip, and instead of seeing maybe Albrighton or Delfonso playing in the team, they would rather maybe have seen Big John Carew, getting John out of London at that time might have been a bit more difficult, but I am joking. Yeah, I think that was it. So those who travelled to Moscow, the people who could make the meal, really enjoyed the meal. The criticism continued after the meal.
Oh, that's what I've heard. I mean, I don't want to go over too much.
Oh, go on. That's not a problem.
Well, I think it was a kind of. It was very Martin. I wasn't there, but it was very Martin O'Neill to me. That there was this gesture to kind of say, okay, you're upset, so here's a. I don't know, a token of appreciation for travelling us. But I think at the same time there was, I'm the manager, it's my decision, kind of don't question me. I think that annoyed people as well.
Oh, did it really? Right, okay, so they took the meal and then they were still annoyed.
The food,
absolutely. I must admit that's new to me. I didn't realise that could have been taken out of that. That was definitely not the intention, absolutely not. I mean, of course, I want to be the manager, I want to be in charge of proceedings. Who else should be, But that is new, definitely new to me now,
In terms of, do you think the context of it, and most Villa managers since Ron Saunders and Tony Barton in 1982 have probably had the same kind of pressure in a way. Do you think it's because Villa have gone so long without silverware that Moscow last 32 almost seemed like this is the year, and you knocked on the door pretty close with a couple of cup finals and things anyway, which we'll mention about in a minute.
Yeah, but that came later. That's the whole point, man. That came the following season where we actually did better again.
Yeah.
But no, I take your point that Villa have gone a long time now, and Villa should be up there vying with the rest of those clubs. There, they really should be doing that, and that's where I really wanted to put them. So, and I didn't think. I get back to saying, if this had been the quarterfinals of the competition, totally different issue. But we had a couple of rounds to go through, and the chances are, if Tottenham were going to not bother about the competition, their next trip was to Shakhtar, and we would be playing a lot of games. The next season, we actually reached the cup final. I think that, and if I'm talking about things, I think that more than anything else probably disappointed and irritated me more than anything, because had we have beaten Manchester United in the final, it's the trophy on the board. It's there, and also my relationship with Mr. Lerner might have improved somewhat at that time. So that would have been great. But we finished, as I say, in the top six again, a couple of points more than the previous season, and we're in the semi-final against Chelsea, but we're beaten at Wembley. But overall, I think that if you're asking me, the disappointment of losing the final when perhaps had Phil Dowd had decided to.
I've got Phil and Dowd written down here. I was just picking my moment when to bring that back up. Does it still?
Of course it does.
Me too.
Absolutely, it really rankles with me because it's a sending off offence. It's the rule of the game. And it doesn't matter whether you're thinking about, will the viewers think this game is a bit lopsided now with a man being sent off after a couple of minutes? That's not your job.
Yeah.
Your job is to referee to the rules of the game. Vidic should have been sent off the pitch. It's really, really simple. We get a penalty, and Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the great managers of all time, and You never know. He might have been down to 6 men and still maybe been able to have won. But there's a fairly decent chance that down to 10 men, a goal in front because James has scored the penalty, and that we have plenty of energy in the team, you know, with Downing playing, with James himself, and obviously with Ashley Young and like Bonlahor, you know. So, you know, if you're asking to, particularly at Wembley, when you've got space, and they probably would have had to have, you know, addressed the situation and probably put on a defender. They might have taken Michael Owen off the field or something like this, or whatever it was. I just can't remember all things. But even that, I think that we could have won the game, and so that would have been the trophy on the board, and then we can push on again.
These are the things that. Big moments that define careers, don't they? Martin O'Neill, trophy winner at Aston Villa. You probably could have quit the next day or walked out whenever, and you wouldn't have gone kind of under the cloud that eventually you left under. And these things matter, don't they? Especially for a club as success-starved as Aston Villa.
Oh, absolutely. And you don't want to. Yeah, I've just said to you there. No, if you had to do it over again, you wouldn't have done that. I mean, eventually I was actually constructively dismissed really in the whole proceedings because of what had happened, and wouldn't want to go too much into the tribunal case, but you know, it worked out for me in that sense. But that's not the view that Villa fans will take, and I genuinely understand that. Yeah, if to do that again, I would have put another head on at that stage and decided, okay, fine, we'll work together. If you have a different agenda, Mr. Lerner, that's fine. In time, Villa fans will find out. That was I don't say it was my remit. Randy Lerner never put me under that pressure to be in the Champions League, never once. But it was my ambition. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to qualify for that.
Looking back on the good moments again, what would you sum up as your best moment or best match or best result? What was the time when you thought, I love managing Aston Villa, this is what it's all about?
Well, I think from your question you feel as if I didn't do it. I absolutely did.
No, I can tell you did.
I really did. Even to have the fun with Mr. Ellis early on. Absolutely, I'm sure if Mr. Ellis was going to be in charge of the football club for my time there, I wouldn't have lasted 4 years. I'm quite sure that there. I know I might not last 4 minutes. No, I absolutely loved it, and I loved the expectation of it, the expectation of managing Aston Villa. You know, and I mentioned it in the book that, you know, the writing going up, the big words. You know, what Peter With, my old colleague, who ends up leaving Forest, going to Newcastle, coming down to Villa, and winning the thing that he prized, you know, winning the European Cup. So absolutely, those things. And what I wanted to do is I wanted the players as well. There had been a lot of pictures taken down of the old team. And I wanted to reinstate them and put them up there and say, this is what we're aspiring to. This is what this club, if you've already achieved something great, as they did do in 1982, why should you not aspire to this again? Why should Aston Villa, one of the oldest teams going, why should they not be great again? And that's what you wanted to do. Now, were we good enough with the side to win the league? Probably not. The Manchester United and Arsenal were, you know, had stronger squads, bigger squads, you know, and could rotate better. But in time, if that's the case, particularly if you've got a trophy under your belt with the confidence really high, and players, you know, players might leave a football club because they can get far more money elsewhere. But if you can try and strive to keep them as long as possible, then you're in a good place. And the Villa fans, listen, every fan will moan about something or other. We've had plenty of games at Villa Park with, oh my God Almighty, why does he not use that substitute? You know, I loved it. I wish now, again, getting back to the point, I wish I could have sorted out my discussions with Mr. Lerner and come to a more pleasant agreement.
So you touched upon, like I said, I wasn't going to spoil it for the readers, but you touched upon the Doug Ellis at your initial meeting with him. Can you give us a little flavour of that?
I knew that at the time, as I was speaking to the secretary, Steve Stride. Steve was a great fellow, really, really great fellow, and Steve had said that he'd worked with Doug for years and years and years. And of course, Doug at this time, there'd always been talk about maybe takeover bids or Doug selling. But this particular time now, with the season having gone so poorly the previous year, and that David O'Leary having left the football club, that Doug maybe might have been forced to leave. The season tickets were right down, and now suddenly, and Steve told me that of all the people interested in buying the football club, the only one that had serious interest and serious and who could do it would be Randy Lerner. And I met up with Randy Lerner, who said to me beforehand, "Listen, you go on with your own thing. I'm far from absolutely certain about this thing." He said, "I want to buy the football club, but if I don't, and Mr. Ellis holds out and doesn't do it," he said, "that's too bad. But if he makes you manager, and I come in, whether in a month, 6 months, or a year," he said, "all being well," he said, I would keep you on." So I kind of thought, well, that's good, because last thing you want to do is sign for a manager, sign as a manager for a chairman, and then find out that he leaves or sells the club and somebody else comes in and you're gone. So from that viewpoint, so I had a couple of meetings with Doug at his house in Four Oaks in Sutton Coldfield, and he was in this day with like just out as if he just played a tennis game, and in the shorts, I do say a pair of legs that would that Stork might be embarrassed to own, but listen, Doug. But so I did make a bit of a jibe by saying, "Is Roger Federer in the bathroom?" or something. I don't think Doug took it all that well, in all honesty. And and I didn't know him that well either. But his legend was in front of me, and of course he had said at that time that he invented the bicycle kick in soccer. And I do remember, I think, seeing a photograph of David Jack doing the same thing in 1923, the first Wembley Cup final for Bolton against West Ham. I think it was a year before Doug was actually born, and I think, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to lose this chance to manage the football club. So, oh, did you, Doug? Did you do it? But he was no fool. He was absolutely no fool whatsoever, And I think it was wasn't it Jimmy Greaves that gave him the line "Deadly Doug," because man, you could walk up, you could be in Doug's office on a Monday, having a nice coffee with him, and then Tuesday you might find yourself with your papers in your hand. So would I could have got on with Doug? And you know what? In some aspects I think I could have done. Most people tell me, some ex-managers have told me, you might have found it difficult, but even so, it was good while it lasted, even for those number of weeks.
So you've mentioned about Doug. Tell us about your relationship with Randy Lerner then. Yeah,
it was initially very, very good. Randy was wanting to do special things with the football club. I think he enhanced the Holt end as well. He wanted the fans, the Aston Villa fans, to actually enjoy the experience of going there. And I think he did some fantastic things at the club, really. And of course he built himself a house a few miles from the training ground, and all seemed well with the world. But like everybody's life changes, personal things happen in people's lives, or he might find that maybe I was a bit too argumentative. It was genuinely, it was really, really terrific to begin with. He put me in charge of the whole club, which was great. The chief executives that he employed, I think he employed 2 in the space of a year, had little or nothing to do with me, didn't interfere at all, and he told them not to. He let me run the whole football club, which is the way I wanted to do it, and that if I was recommending some players to come to the football club, if he could do it, he would try and do it. If he couldn't, he would let me know. So it was really, really, really decent relationship. I think he felt that. He thought with the younger players coming through, and I loved watching the younger players. I know at youth team level, I loved the Youth Cup. In fact, I had taken the first team away for a couple of days to the south of Spain, and I travelled back on a flight to watch the youth boys play at Carlisle, and then go back again to join up with the senior squad. So I loved travelling with them. Did I think that the youth team players at that time were good enough to step into the shoes of, let's say, an injured Ashley Young or an injured James Milner? No, I didn't think that. I still wanted to, as I've mentioned to you before, push on, try and get into the Champions League. I didn't think that they were good enough at that stage. And some of the lads have gone on to Mark Albright, who would have played in the opening game, had I stayed that, he was down because he had a sensational pre-season with us at senior level. He would have definitely opened against West Ham, which I think he did, but he would have played under me at the time. I thought Delfonso was going to come through as a really good player. Barry Bannon was always small, and that was going to be against him. And Kieran Clark, I suppose, to an extent. But, I really genuinely wasn't sure.
So is that the kind of pressure that you felt, that Randy thought that this youth team squad could go on, whereas you thought you needed to maintain experience?
Oh, well, absolutely. I think Paul Faulkner, who eventually became, who was Randy's PA to begin with, and then he became the chief executive. Paul and I were working together. But I think Paul was thought, and with respect, I'm the football manager, and I think Paul thought that, and was saying to Randy, Paul thought that these young lads were going to be, the answer. Well, I didn't see that,
So James Milner, the James Milner to Man City deal, that eventually became the tipping point, is that right?
James wanted to leave to go to Manchester City. That's true, because for a number of reasons. I think he thought that even though we were on the up, as it were, that Manchester City, with all the things that they had at that time, and of course he was going to improve his wages and things like this here. I don't honestly think that was a major thing in James, but if somebody's offering you 2.5 times what you're getting before, I think you really have to have a thought about it. And so James leaving, and I have to say I took all of these things rather too personally, really too personally. I brought James into the football club. I know he'd been out on loan before at Villa and done fine, but I changed him from wide right to centre midfield because this is what he do, and he was fantastic for us. You kind of, to an extent, and please take this in the right sort of way, you feel as if you've got a part ownership of these players, but you realise that all these great relationships, you think, maybe might not be as strong as you think. But so I took it too personally, really. I thought he was going to stay, and I think that James would have stayed. One day Randy said, listen, we're going to keep him, we're going to try and get Scott Parker. There was talk, I think the Scott Parker's agent had been in touch saying that with our chief scout, Ian Story-Moore, saying that they would have serious interest, and we thought, well, no, that could happen. And Randy said, well, listen, we'll try and get Scott Parker, but we'll keep James. And I thought, that's fantastic. And then the following day, no, it was a complete change. Again, you take yourself into a dark room, put a cloth around your head, and have a rethink instead of reacting immediately. And I think those things are.
So I think it kind of came to a head around the Valencia friendly on a Friday night at Villa Park. And to talk us through your thought processes from.
Well, I think that Stephen Ireland, I felt was coming to. Stephen Ireland he had been a fine player at Manchester City a couple of years before that. I think that Stephen Ireland was not going to figure in Manchester City's plans, and I didn't think that paying a substantial amount of money for him, particularly when you could have waited to the last moment and got him virtually for nothing, I didn't feel that was great, and because he wasn't going to figure at Man City, he wasn't even going to get a squad number. And so if you wait towards the end, then Manchester City would be only too willing to talk smaller terms than that there. But it was, and listen, at the end of the day, it's these things happen. I have to say that the whatever I am as a manager, the owner of a football club has his own decisions to make, and actually maybe I didn't see that at the time, but I think that again, in hindsight, you look and you think, well, he is the owner. He has the one that's tried to improve the football club in many aspects, and so that decision should rest with him probably.
So Randy's U-turn set in motion a chain of events that saw you resign, I think, on the Monday, and again, can't go into too much detail for various reasons, but effectively win a constructive dismissal.
That's right. Yeah. So do you know what? Honestly, there's really little point in going over a lot of these particular things now at this minute. The bottom line is that if you're asking me now, and in fact, even if you'd asked me maybe a year after events, then I would certainly have. I would have stayed on at the football club, pushed on, And I wouldn't have been. People said, "Oh, it's because it was he was asking for more money," which is an absolute myth. The myth. It wasn't the case. I did say to Randy that some stage or another you will get your money back for the likes of James Milner, Ashley Young, and Stuart Downing, and you will make some money in those deals. Let us try and push on, which they did do, but not every. I was expecting perhaps more from the likes of Sidwell and Nigel Reo-Coker, at the time. Really expecting that, and but overall, I thought we had a squad capable of. We'd certainly be in the top 6. Can we push into those last 2 positions? That was it. But this idea that I was asking for a lot more than that, was simply not true.
Do you acknowledge that the kind of, I think you touched on this before, but do you acknowledge that the manner of your departure has tainted your legacy in the eyes of many Villa fans?
People leaving. Yeah, I mean we finished 3 top 6s. You're trying to push on. Yeah, I'm not going to convince everyone. In fact, I did a little function last night in Oswestry, and 3 Villa fans did come up to me. Now I know that they weren't going to be cantankers or anything like this here, but they said had really great days there. But there'll be lots of Villa fans who say, "No, listen here, he left us in the lurch," that type of stuff. So I'm not going to convince people. I've said to you before, or said during this interview, that if I had to do it over again, I'd absolutely stay put. We finished in the top 6. This is the interesting thing about it. I didn't think the top 6 was good enough for Aston Villa. That's really it. That's it. I wanted to be in the Champions League. I'd had the experience of that there at Celtic. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like that music being played. Imagine having that played at Villa Park. That was my driving. And that's what I wanted. And we nearly did it in 2 particular years. We went to Manchester City. If we'd won the last 2 games, I think we'd have made it. Manchester City, and then we were leading 1-0, and then they beat us. Second last game of the season, we lost. Anyway, I'm wandering on here at the moment, just to tell you that was what I didn't think. I didn't think that the top 6 was good enough for Aston Villa.
Do you think, and I hope I've phrased this correctly, but my experience of you when I was the local reporter and you the Aston Villa manager was you could be both charming and ferocious, sometimes charming and ferocious at the same time. Mm. Do you feel like you have mellowed now with this distance from the game? You certainly seem to have, if you don't mind me saying.
No, I haven't mellowed. No, I have not mellowed. No, I have changed my mind about or would have done something differently. But that doesn't mean I've mellowed. Absolutely not. No. I look across, I see you, a bit older than the git that I used to know, and you would pick up and run with something, which is miles off course, and so absolutely not. No, it's not a mellowing. Even as I get older, I probably get a bit more cantankerous and more vicious. Was it? What did you say? Vicious? Did it? No, was it vicious?
Ferocious.
Ferocious. Yeah. So no. I didn't. Those are not the things. I had a bit of fun writing the book. That's fine. I wanted to tell it in the manner in which I supposedly come across. But no. You're managing a football team. You're managing a football club. Those things are important, and you have to be in charge. And this is the interesting thing, Matt. More than anything else, players nowadays probably couldn't take the sort of criticism that was dished out when I was a player. We accept that. Life has changed. But the remarkable thing about it is that when managers do leave a football club, then you'll get a group of players who are saying, he was too soft with us. He was too soft. Players, even now, even though they can't take the criticism, do still want to be managed. They want to be managed. They want to have a strong voice in that dressing room. They want to have a leader in that dressing room. And that's really, in terms of my management, that's what I wanted to do. So if the likes of John Carew or Milner, those people had a little bit of fear because this is what I wanted from them, that's absolutely fine by me. Absolutely fine. I didn't. My job as a football manager was not a popularity contest in the dressing room. Absolutely not. Never has been. And I learned that from a very early stage. You can still have great respect from the players, and I genuinely think this, and the only bit of boasting I'll do, I think I had that there. It was interesting when Curtis Davis, I think it was, said that, did one of those like Harry Redknapp interviews, winding down the window when I'd left, and he said something, the manager had his favourites. And if I'd been there, I would have interjected and said, yeah, they were usually my best players.
I suppose, what would your message be to Villa fans now, and how would you like to be remembered by?
No, you said it's not. I don't. That doesn't bother me about about that. It's interesting because we're in the top 6 for 3 consecutive years, and again, I keep repeating, this is not really where I wanted to go. Although European football now, and Villa, it's been a struggle for some time, and yet I would go back to football grounds, and I went to Villa Park a couple of times when I was manager of the Republic of Ireland, and I was kind of sneaking in the back door, and I should not be sneaking in the back door for what I did at the football club. That's the whole point. So if leaving at the football club taints everything about it, there is absolutely nothing I could do about it. Would I change? Would I do it differently? Absolutely, I would have done. And that's all I can say. But it's not for me to ask Villa fans. Villa fans, I will have one or two saying, "Listen, really enjoyed those days," and they have. I will have Villa fans saying, "You left us in the lurch." I cannot change people's minds at the end of the day, and I don't think that I wanted to try and explain what had happened during that time, and still Villa fans will make up their minds, or no matter what I say in the book, they may never change their minds. So it doesn't. It's when I say it's not a concern of mine. Of course, you would like everybody to think that we had some good days, and I think if you ask Ashley Young and James Milner, who've gone on to play for Manchester United and Liverpool, and James has won umpteen trophies with the clubs, even at Manchester City, I think they would say that some of their Villa days were as enjoyable a days as they had.
No, that's brilliant. Well, I've found it therapeutic and insightful. I hope it hasn't been too boring for you catching up with me after all this time.
Not at all, man. Not at all. Honestly, So I'm actually going to walk out of here and think he's not too bad. He's not the blurt that I knew. But actually, I think you are. So okay. Anyway,
thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure. No
Best
problem.
of luck with the book.
Okay.
There's a brilliant Villa chapter in there, and there's lots more to get stuck into if you're a football fan. So you've been watching Claret Blue podcast with me, Mat Kendrick, and Martin O'Neill. Thanks so much, Martin.
Okay, pleasure, man. Okay, no problem.
Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, up the Villa.